Hello and welcome to this session. Today it's just myself. Jan Christian is out traveling, but I have Vidar with me who will have some more myths that he will bust today. So I'll leave the screen over to him.
So today we'll do some myth busting again. I've got three myths this time. The first one is I hear people that they don't think too much about data types and like choosing date time or date time 2 doesn't really matter, does it? Let's have a tiny look at how much space each of them are using. The default, if you're in Management Studio and you want to add a time column, the default there is 7 as precision, and you see that the precision of it, meaning the decimals after comma, is a bit more than you technically need, in my opinion. 2 decimals after comma there, that's more than enough. So that's 3 bytes per value instead of 5 bytes. Doesn't sound like much. Same with if you're using datetime 2, the default there is the datetime 2 parentheses 7, which is 8 bytes. But when do you ever need more than 2? And the same with the normal datetime that we use some places. This one has a precision which looks like it has 3 digits after comma. But the problem with this, the last one, is that it's either 0, 3, or 7. So it's not really 3, it's more like 2 in precision. But still it uses 8 bytes. So the datetime, in my opinion, could be switched with datetime 2 and parentheses 2 without losing any data. But you gain 2 bytes per value. Again, doesn't sound like much. Same with numbers. You have decimal. There's a lot of variants that you can put there, but what kind of depends on the size here, the bytes, is the first number. So if it's 9, 19, 28, or 38. You can, of course, do 7.2, but that will use the same space as 9.2. So with 9 as the precision, you'll have 5 bytes, 19 as 9 bytes, etc. And I see a lot of columns like quantity is defined as decimal 38.8. That's 12 bytes for each of the quantities. That is just waste of space. Same with real and floats. We shouldn't use floats at all, but there are some calculated columns, for instance, that are floats, but casting them as real and then persisting them will save 4 bytes per row of per value. So let's imagine we changed all the created and updated columns that we have in our tables from datetime 2, 7 to datetime 2, 2. We look for columns that have date in the name, but not time. So this could be adjusted date or transfer date or accounting date or whatever. We think that they should be changed from datetime to the date data type. Then let's do all the others that are datetime or datetime 2 parentheses more than 2. We change those to datetime 2 and 2 and parentheses. This will, again, just make sure that we don't have more than 2 decimals. Now, I know that some are going to say that, yeah, but in this rare case that we're doing logging, we really need more than 2 decimals. Okay, in that case, that's sure, but we don't need that in all tables that we got. We do the same for time. just removing the decimals basically, so that we have 2 decimals instead of 7. Doing some tricks with decimal, so that the quantity and man hours and width, length, kilos, etc. There's no point in having a max value more than or 10 millions or more for kilos. Then you should change to tons instead. And whatever's higher than that in decimal, we don't need like accounting data. I'm pretty sure that there's not going to be many companies doing transactions that have higher than 9, I think that's trillion on their transactions. And let's do float to real. So Johnny, if we have 6 different databases, we have Market Maker, which is our internal system, Omega 365, which is being built now, and we got PIMS Dev, etc. How much do you think that we might potentially save with doing these changes?
I guess it's not that much. Are we talking about 10%?
That's a bit high, but for these particular databases, we're talking about 1% for Market Maker. Now, remember that these have been changed a lot lately, and Omega 365 is quite new, so everything's built from scratch, more or less. But if we have a look at our customers, and I've just checked with a couple of our bigger customers, the database sizes here you see are from 100 to 500 gigabytes, and the savings here are a bit bigger. So for customer 1, we're saving 2.8%, which doesn't sound that much, but customer 3, we're saving 6.1%. And this is in data that is just wasted. It's not something that we need in any way. Back to what I was saying, yes, some of these columns might not, you can't just alter all of these columns and just say that that's going to work. You might need to look through the list and see that, okay, this log date should have been called log date time, and therefore we can't change it to a date type. But still, the problem here is that we have quite a bit of data, not lost, but we're wasting a lot of disk space. And this makes every query that we're running, we need to get more data to the client that's requesting this data. So if we're doing select top 1,000 yada yada some accounting data, we're getting way more data than we need. But my biggest issue with this is the memory, because if we have a look at the same customers and our internal databases, we're more or less using 100% of our memory. And in my case, I'm kind of I've done a lot to performance tune. I've added indexes and those kinds of things, but I'm struggling with memory. We are now maxed out at the physical limit of the hardware. We cannot put in more memory, but still we're at more or less 100% memory usage. I need to remove data that is not needed, and this will be a good point in that list here. So, myth 3, I don't need spending time on choosing the right data type. In my opinion, busted for sure. Next one, missing indexes. This is something that I didn't know before a couple of years ago. That of course I know that when Management Studio gives me like this, missing index. You can create this one. Just right-clicking it and then clicking on the missing details, missing index details, and then it generates a create index script that I've been using for many years. I think since Management Studio came, or maybe this came with SQL Server 2008. I'm not sure, but I've been using it a long time. What I haven't been aware of, though, is that if you click on the Show Execution Plan XML, which is the second item in this right-click menu, you will get to something like this. It shows the execution plan as XML, but be aware that this one, the missing index, is just basically the random index that it proposed, because this query might have multiple indexes that it might want. And in this case, you see that we have estimated impact is 70.4%. But the next one under this one can be 100% or 90% or whatever. So don't just take the first one that Management Studio is giving you. Right. So myth number 4, busted. Don't just use the first index that Management Studio is requesting. Myth number 5, rebuilding indexes every night gives me better performance. Now, I see Johnny smiling. Do you want to bust this for me?
No, I was smiling for a completely different reason. Take it.
Okay. All right. So I hear this being said a lot, and yes, back in 1847, when we used to use mechanical hard drives, this was true. The reason for this is, as you see on the picture here, that on the mechanical drives, there are rotating what looks like CDs, basically. So this is rotating mechanically, and there's an arm that is reading data from that CD. The problem then is if you're doing random access, so you need some here, some there, some here, some there. The movement of that mechanical arm takes time. Therefore, the mechanical drives are very bad at random access reads, as they're called, but sequential reads. So if you just go there and then read all of that data, that is the mechanical hard drives are quite good at that. And therefore, we wanted to rebuild our indexes every night to make sure that everything, as much as possible, is in sequential order. So if you're getting some data, you want it sequential. But this will, when you're rebuilding the indexes, it also updates the statistics for those indexes and tables. And that is where we're seeing the actual performance gain. So when you're doing rebuild index, you're actually not doing much with the indexes, but you're updating the statistics. So let's get to the 21st century and invest in SSDs. If you're on mechanical drives, yeah, get on SSDs. These have more or less the same random reads as sequential. Or I think it is the same. Jan Christian, do you know if it's exactly the same, or is it?
Actually, not sure. Probably more or less. Yeah.
Yeah, more or less. But there's still a need for rebuilding indexes, but monthly, in my opinion, is more than enough. But that depends on your system, because if you're doing a lot of inserts and deletes, you might want to rebuild the indexes more often, because what rebuilding indexes is also doing is cleaning up. So if you're doing a lot of deletes, it's not actually cleaning up the the indexes. It's leaving a lot of empty space inside of the indexes, and that can be released when you're doing rebuild indexes. But doing update statistics, that will help you a lot. And that's what, like when you're rebuilding indexes, that is what you're actually gaining, because you cannot rebuild indexes without updating statistics. That's not allowed by the SQL Server. So by default, when you're rebuilding indexes, you're also updating statistics, and that is what you're seeing. So myth 5, rebuilding indexes every night gives me better performance. That's just not true. It's the update statistics that are doing it. Yes, in some rare cases, it might have been that one. You haven't done it for 50 years or something. That's what I've got.
Thank you, Vidar. Very good, very interesting. And as you may heard, Jan Christian was actually with us, and I'm not quite sure about this, but he tells me that he has a couple of SQL jokes that he want to share. So if you have something more sensible to do, please log off now, or if not, you can listen to Jan Christian's SQL jokes.
Yeah.
Okay, Jan Christian.
So you usually jokes, my brain returns a 404, but when I read those two, actually on the airplane to north of Norway, where I am today, my mind just blew. So I really need to see if it was only me or you as well. So here goes. A SQL query walks into a bar and asks the bartender, "Do you mind if I join these two tables?" That's number one.
Okay, you have one more? Or?
Yes, and the second one even better. Why do front-end developers eat lunch alone? They don't know how to join tables.
Okay, thank you.
I hope you didn't laugh off me, but with me, so that was good.
That was very good. And I think that was it for today. Next Friday, we will share with you some updates on PIMS R4. The September release just got out an hour or so ago. So next Friday, we will share you what the most important updates are. Thank you.